Springfield M1903. The U.S. Army walked into the 20th century with a stolen idea, the Mauser Model 93. Spain used it against American troops in Cuba in 1898, and it worked so well that the U.S. government got sued for patent infringement and paid Mauser $200,000 to settle. The 1903 borrowed the rotating bolt, the 5-round stripper clip, the whole architecture. Chambered in .30-06, it was accurate out to 600 yards in trained hands, and American doughboys carried it into the trenches of France in 1918. Sergeant Alvin York, the most decorated American soldier of the war, used one to help take down a German machine gun position and dozens of prisoners in a single engagement. The problem was rate of fire. Bolt action means 1 round, cycle the bolt, 1 round again. Against German stormtroopers with automatic weapons, that math got worse every year. By the mid-1930s, the Army knew the next war would not be won by soldiers working a bolt by hand. M1 Garand. General George Patton called it the greatest battle implement ever devised. That is a strong claim from a man who spent his life around weapons, but the math backs him up. The Garand was semi-automatic, gas-operated, 8 rounds in an N-block clip, and when the last round fired, the empty clip ejected with a distinctive metallic ping. German and Japanese soldiers learned to listen for that ping as the signal to move, because it meant an empty rifle for 2 or 3 seconds. American troops learned to fake it, tossing a spent clip on the ground to lure the enemy into the open. It entered service in 1936, and by the time World War II started for the US, it was already the standard infantry rifle, giving American soldiers a rate of fire that outclassed almost every bolt-action rifle carried by the Axis powers. It fought through the Pacific, through North Africa, through Normandy, and stayed in service through Korea. By the mid-1950s, though, NATO wanted a rifle that could take a detachable magazine and standardize ammunition across allied nations, and the Garand's clip-fed design was already looking like the past. M14. Take a Garand, give it a 20-round detachable magazine, add select fire capability, and you have the M14. It was supposed to replace 3 different weapons at once: the Garand, the M1 Carbine, and the Thompson submachine gun. On paper, that's efficient. In practice, it was still chambered in full-power 7.62 NATO, and on automatic fire, the recoil made it almost uncontrollable. Soldiers in Vietnam found it climbed off target after the 2nd or 3rd round in a burst. It was heavy. The wood stock swelled in jungle humidity, and the war it was meant for looked nothing like the close-range, high-volume firefights American troops actually found themselves in. The M14's service life as the standard infantry rifle lasted barely 7 years before the Army started looking at something radically different. It never fully disappeared, though. Accurized versions still serve today as designated marksman rifles, which says something about how good the fundamental design actually was, even if it was the wrong tool for 1964. M16. Eugene Stoner's design threw out wood and heavy steel for aluminum and fiberglass reinforced plastic, and it threw out the full-power rifle round for a small, fast 5.56mm cartridge that let a soldier carry twice the ammunition at half the weight. The Air Force adopted it first. The Army followed once Vietnam made it clear that a lighter weapon with more rounds on tap mattered more than long-range punch in the jungle. Early versions had a well-documented reliability problem. The Pentagon marketed it as needing no cleaning. Soldiers in the field were issued no cleaning kits to match that claim, and the ammunition powder specification had been changed without adjusting the gas system for it. Rifles jammed at the worst possible moments, and soldiers died because of it. Congress held hearings. A chrome-lined chamber, a forward assist, revised ammunition, and by the 1980s, the M16A2 had become one of the most reliable rifles in the world. It served as the U.S. standard for 30 years, through the Cold War, the Gulf War, and into the 1990s, until the Army decided that the future belonged to something shorter. M4 Carbine. Take the M16, cut the barrel down, add a collapsible stock, and you get a rifle built for the environment Special Forces had been complaining about for years. Vehicles, helicopters, doorways, urban combat where a full-length rifle just gets in the way. What made the M4 different wasn't really the barrel length, though. It was the flat-top rail. Suddenly, a rifle could carry a red dot sight, a flashlight, a grenade launcher, all bolted on as needed rather than built in. It became modular in a way no American service rifle had ever been. It carried U.S. forces through Iraq and Afghanistan for 2 decades, through urban combat that the M16 architects in the 1960s never could have designed for. But by the mid-2000s, complaints were mounting again. Barrel heat in sustained fire, reliability questions in sand and dust, and the Army opened the door to the first real competition its rifle had faced in 50 years. XM8 and SCAR. For a brief window in the early 2000s, it looked like the M16 family might finally be replaced. Heckler & Koch's XM8 looked like something out of a science fiction film. Polymer body, integrated rail system, modular barrel lengths for different roles, all chambered in the same 5.56 by 45 NATO round everyone already had ammunition for. It tested well. Then it got killed. Partly over cost, partly over politics within the Army's acquisition process, and partly because critics argued the improvements over the M4 weren't dramatic enough to justify replacing an entire arsenal. FN's SCAR had a better fate. Developed for U.S. Special Operations Command, it offered quick-change barrels and could be reconfigured between 5.56 and 7.62 variants. It survived where the XM8 didn't, and today it still serves in a narrow lane, special operations units who need the flexibility, while the wider conventional force stayed with the M4, 2 sci-fi trials, 1 dead end and 1 niche survivor. HK416. This is what you get when you take the M4's exterior and swap the internal operating system. The M16 and M4 use direct impingement. Gas from firing is piped straight back into the bolt carrier, which is simple and accurate but dumps carbon and heat into the action. Heckler & Koch replaced that with a short-stroke gas piston borrowed conceptually from designs like the AK, which keeps the action cleaner and more reliable in sand, mud, and prolonged use. Delta Force adopted it quietly in the mid-2000s. It stayed unofficial and low-profile for years, the kind of rifle you'd only hear about because of blurry photos from raids, most famously reported in connection with the 2011 operation that killed Osama bin Laden. It became the de facto standard for elite American units without ever going through a full conventional rollout. Proof that the improvements over standard direct impingement rifles were real enough that operators voted with their trigger fingers before the bureaucracy caught up. XM7. In 2022, the Army made its biggest rifle decision in almost 30 years, and it went in a direction almost nobody expected. The XM7, built by Sig Sauer as part of the Next Generation Squad Weapon Program, drops the 5.56 round that's been standard since Vietnam and returns to a larger 6.8mm cartridge, hybrid cased with steel and brass to handle chamber pressures nearly double what the M4 runs. The reasoning is body armor. Modern ceramic plate designs have made 5.56 increasingly marginal at range against a peer adversary, and the Army wants a round with the penetration to matter against that threat. It comes standard with a government-developed optic that handles ballistic calculation automatically. It is heavier, the ammunition is heavier, and critics inside and outside the military have already raised the same question that dogged the M1460 years earlier. Does raw stopping power matter more than what a soldier can actually carry and control in a sustained fight? That argument is still being fought out today, which means the 9th chapter of this story hasn't been written yet.